Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Sirhan on X, coming to you live from Cincinnati, Ohio, in the United States. Hope everyone had themselves a wonderful 29th of May of the calendar year 2025. That means we're getting closer to summer weather, and finally, spring weather is finally breaking through here in Cincinnati. It's taken a bit, but we're finally going to get it because after the weekend, it's going to get to the 70s and 80s. After a long drought of May, we're had temperatures at points in mid 40s to even low 40s, which is odd for this time of year, lower than the usual. So, but here we are. It's coming to June. Once Sunday at midnight hits, we're going to finally hit June weather, and we're finally going to get it. Hope everyone had themselves a wonderful day at the whatever parts of town you may be in. Just going to go ahead and get right down to it here real quickly. Uh, got all my technical difficulties finally fixed, so let's see how long this one lasts. Start with what's going on in Cincinnati. Report came out earlier today that apparently Trey Hendrickson, the standout edge rusher, is all in or is dug in to the ideological concept that he is going to sit out the entire season. So he'd rather not play in the deal because he feels, quote, disrespected, end quote. But he thinks sitting out the entire season is going to be the way to go for him. Someone needs to remind him what happened with Pittsburgh Steelers running back Le'Veon Bell when he took that route, because he was in the same predicament as Trey Hendrickson is with a contract situation. You know, Bell sat out the entire season. I can't remember, I think it was 2018. And basically, it was the end game for him at that point. Trey Hendrickson is in that particular ballpark. Of course, there's more to it with this than basically with Le'Veon Bell in Pittsburgh. That was probably more of a sort of an ego thing on Bell's part, which the Pittsburgh Steelers didn't want to deal with it, you know, rightfully so. But from this point of view, it's a case where I think everybody loses, not just the Cincinnati Bengals organization, but also Trey Hendrickson and his agent, Harold Lewis. They had ample opportunities to resolve this issue before it got to this point, and there seemed to be a massive lack of communication both ways when it comes to this. Of course, the timeline started way back after all the negotiations began with the extensions toward Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. And what happens? Someone was going to be left out of the cold. And who's it turned out to be? None other than Trey Hendrickson. Then, of course, they meet, and his agent, Harold Lewis, tells the Bengals front office, you can go ahead and give us a chance to explore trades. We're more than likely going to get you a first-round pick. The Bengals explored it and didn't like the offers they got. And so we're stuck in this predicament. And of course, it was not too long ago where Hendrickson revealed that head coach Zach Taylor openly and said to him that if he doesn't show up for mandatory OTAs, he's going to get fined. You know, a lot of weird circumstances regarding that particular situation that came out of Hendrickson's mouth. Nobody knows the reality of it. But if he's really going to go down that route, he's not going to get anything out of it, and his value is going to plummet. As I said, look at what happened with Le'Veon Bell of the Pittsburgh Steelers when he went down that route a few years ago as the running back for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, he sat out the entire season, and his value diminished. Even he said years later, if he had to do it all over again, he would have just played out the contract and just walked as a free agent. Now, of course, the situation here is the fact that Trey Hendrickson could be franchised over the next 2 years, which I don't know how true that is or not. I don't know if the Bengals will want to go that route. You know, the guy's slated to make $16 million this year. I mean, apparently there's an offer in the $28 million range, which probably is not going to be enough. And it's not only that, he also wants long-term security over here. We consider the contracts that Max Crosby of the Raiders and Myles Garrett of the Cleveland Browns got in terms of, you know, their dollar figures and longevity. And not to mention the one-year extension that Danielle Hunter got in Houston in the offseason, which extends him to 2026. They would pay him an excess of $36 million. Trey Hendrickson saw it and basically said, because of this, my value went up. I'm not taking anything out of the value range simply because that's how the market is. I want to pay market value, and the Bengals is not budging. This situation could have been resolved at least a year or maybe 2 years ago, because a couple years back they did extend Hendrickson a year, with included an $8 million signing bonus. They could have gone more than a year after that had they chosen to, but they didn't. Hendrickson and his people last offseason requested a trade for the same reasons, and now we're having the same discussion already again, and now he's talking about holding out. I still don't think he's not going to do it, because look at what's going to happen to his value. Just as I said before, look at what happened with Bill in Pittsburgh when he sat out the entire season because of a dispute. His value dropped, everything dropped, and the rest is history. Trey Hendrickson is going to be 31 at some point this season. It's hard to see why he's not or will not get a deal, not from the Bengals, but from anybody else for that value. Somebody will probably pay him, probably not the value like, say, what Myles Garrett got in Cleveland. I mean, it's a case of desperate teams doing desperate things at desperate times when Cleveland offered Garrett the contract. I don't think the Bengals are in that territory, because they felt like paying two wide receivers and at a quarterback the equivalent of nearly $600 million from when it was paid to the end of the decade. Basically said, this is our team. Everything is set in stone. Take it or leave it, because that seemed to be the approach right now going on in Cincinnati. I still think he's going to play out the contract. I mean, I can't see him doing anything else. I mean, if they want to try and trade him, that's fine, but they're not getting a first for him. They'll be lucky to net a third for him at best, and that might be pushing it. It's a case of where the Bengals, unless someone breaks the bank to get Trey Hendrickson, they're not going to put him on the trading block, because they're going to get something they want and in their value, in their minds, and no one's going to bend the knee to them. They went through this once way back with the Carson Palmer trade. They lucked out because at the time the Oakland Raiders needed a quarterback, and they basically broke the bank to get him. It's not going to happen here in this scenario. I still think Hendrickson goes to play for the Bengals this season, unless something miraculous happens. I mean, maybe a 1-year deal may be in the cards, but Hendrickson wants long-term security. It's complicated, it's complex, and the whole thing is ridiculous simply because everything had their chance to be resolved at least a year or two before all of this happened, but nobody wanted to go down that route. That's just terrible. The thing is, I mean, I don't know what you're going to get out of him anyways. Your defense was just an embarrassment even with him last season. I mean, in the big games, some of the big games last season, he hardly even showed up. I mean, of the 17.5 sacks, 4 of them came against the Las Vegas Raiders, who were tanking, and 3.5 of them came against a Pittsburgh Steelers team who was just reeling at the end of the season, who lost, I think, 4 of their last 5 before the playoffs. So, but in between there, so many gaps of inconsistency. Didn't show up in their losses to the Chargers, the Eagles, and the Patriots. So it's an interesting dilemma what they have there with Trey Hendrickson at Cincinnati. Should have been resolved a long time ago, but I get why we're in the situation we're in. And speaking of Cincinnati, still the hubbub all over the media waves and all over the social media platforms that's taking place once again when it comes to the silly conversation of them finding something wrong with having to go to Baltimore on Thanksgiving night. As I said many times before, they're the ones that find everything wrong with everything. When I think of Bengals fans, I will display this image again. This is probably the most treacherous thing I ever took. Every time I go down there, probably going to keep this everywhere I go from moving on forward. For those who don't know, probably listening on the iHeartRadio app, among others, it's an image of when I went down Cincinnati, and there was a big display of Kleenex tissues being the proud partner of the Cincinnati Bengals. It fits the Bengals fans, the so-called cosplay fans like Zim, the captain, this Game 513, whoever that crooked-looking moron that he is, and some of the media people like Sarah Elise and Kelsey Conway, who are just cowards themselves. That fits them perfectly, because when they don't get their own way, they take to social media, they take to the radio airwaves, they whine and cry about it. And that's what they're doing here also. You got to go to Baltimore regardless. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's on Thanksgiving Day, doesn't matter if it's on Christmas Day, doesn't matter if it's on some, funky looking, fill up the poop type holiday, which is a lot of that going on in Cincinnati. You still got to go to Baltimore, because if you want to be the Kings of the North, Guess who's the team to beat? The Baltimore Ravens. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's on a Thursday night. Doesn't matter if it's on a Sunday night. Doesn't matter if it's on a Monday night. You have to go to Baltimore and get the job done. I mean, you want the funny thing is, year in and year out, I hear the same gripes from the same fan base regards to not just myself, but some of the others who try to tell them how it is, and they resort to making a big deal about it. Why? Because they have nothing else better to do. It's plain and simple. It's over with. The schedule is made out. If you're still complaining about it in Cincinnati, you're the problem. I told you this countless times. You guys are becoming every bit the problem that's gone on here in Cincinnati. Because going back to when you guys threw a Twitter party when you signed a third-tier left tackle named Orlando Brown Jr. from Kansas City, you guys just celebrate every little irrelevant thing and whine about some of the most irrelevant things, even less relevant than the Twitter party you had when you signed Orlando Brown Jr., because that was just an embarrassment. I mean, you guys thought getting Orlando Brown Jr. was going to put him in the category as the greatest left tackle in Bengals history, Anthony Munoz. 90% of you guys did. I don't know, because I saw it. And look at what's happened since. Since he's came to the team, 2 straight years, the Bengals missed the playoffs. The team left the Kansas City Chiefs, 2 Super Bowl appearances, and a Super Bowl ring as a result. That should tell you who was the winner of that particular situation. And don't think for one second, all of those teams in the AFC North with the elite edge rushers like TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Myles Garrett, and at the time, Jadeveon Clowney, who was with Baltimore, was licking their chops to go at him because they went at him and they abused him. Perfect point of this was when the Sunday night game in Pittsburgh, when Alex Highsmith just blew Orlando Brown Jr. like he was in cement shoes. My point to all this is that's how you guys celebrate this stuff, and you guys are making a big deal out of what's going on Thanksgiving night in Baltimore. It's much ado about nothing, per usual. Why? Because you have to go. If you want something to complain about, how about what's taking place 4 days before that? Because it's 4 days before that, guess who's coming to town? The team that basically knocked you out of the playoffs week 1 of last season, the New England Patriots. And it's going to be a much improved New England Patriots team, not the one that was tanking last season with Jacoby Brissett. They're going to have Drake May coming to that team, and Trey Hendrickson, the running back they drafted out of Ohio State. How about worry about trying to beat them first before worrying about some trip to Baltimore that you have to make every year regardless? Because week 12, that game, is going to matter more than you think. If the New England Patriots come there and beat you before you have to go to Baltimore, Tennessee, all of that whining you guys done about complaining about the schedule, complaining about this, complaining about that, it's going to go down the tubes, because there might be another case where they may dictate your course toward the postseason if you manage to get to that point. Funny how you guys don't think about the entire details and you think about the small details, because your vision is like this all the time when you see the schedule. Here we are, the schedule's already done, and you're still complaining about having to go to Baltimore for Thanksgiving night. You're going to make the trip to Baltimore, and what's even worse, it's not you guys are complaining about it. You have a $300 million quarterback yapping about it, acting like it's a problem. Newsflash, I ain't paying you $300 million to whine about the schedule. I'm paying you $300 million to go play that game in Baltimore. When it comes to Thanksgiving 6 months from now, you better shut your mouth and get the job done in Baltimore if you're going to complain about it. If you don't get the job done this year in Baltimore, then you have no room to gripe about the schedule ever again. That includes the players, the fans, the super fans, and the Cincinnati media, because the outright crying that's going on over here in Cincinnati when it comes to that Thanksgiving Day game in Baltimore, it's basically set the city on a flood warning now as a result, because all you guys just whine and cry about some of the most silliest stuff, and you don't think about anything else other than your own narcissism, your own cowardice, and your own ignorance when it comes to something like this, because at this point, that schedule is set in stone. You're going to Baltimore on Thanksgiving night. Say whatever you want. Voice your opinion. It don't matter. Stop the crying. Put your adult pants on. Go over there and play Baltimore on Thanksgiving night, because it's over. Actually, good luck trying to beat the Patriots 4 days before that, because you saw what happened when the Patriots came here week 1 last season. It might be deja vu all over again week 12. I'll be keeping my eye on that one. And another news out of Cincinnati is a holdout of Shemar Stewart. Again, contract language, just like with Trey Hendrickson. But Shemar Stewart needs to flat out shut up and take what's given. because he had no business being drafted number 17 overall in the first round. The guy's not even a first round talent. I don't know who in the Bengals staff thought he was a first round talent, simply because that is who Shemar Stewart was. He's not good enough to be a first round talent, and whoever put him on their draft board in the first round needs to thoroughly check for CTE. I mean, he's a solid athlete, nothing more, nothing less, but first round worthy, far from it. Now he's in a holdout because he wants things his way. He wants to be paid at the level at some of the others that were picked 17th overall over the last couple seasons. But he's not going to get that because we know how the Bengals front office works. I don't give the Bengals front office a time of day for anything, but they're the ones that's in the right in this case because that guy had no business being drafted in the first round. And whoever's idea was to draft him 17th overall in the first round of the 2025 NFL draft needs to be sent to the hospital for CTE in the worst way, because no way was that a first round worthy pick. There were better options at that edge position they could have taken, but they didn't. But they chose him. But as far as Stewart goes, he should be thankful he's given the opportunity to play on an NFL roster being drafted 17th overall, because teams could have passed him up all over the place. I mean, you saw what happened with Shedeur Sanders when teams just passed him up left and right before the Cleveland Browns got him. Shemar Stewart should be thankful and lucky he was drafted in the first round, because he's not a first round talent. And it says a lot about the Bengals scouting department, who put him as a first round talent when there were better options available for that 17th pick. Kids these days, I'm telling you, they're all about the almighty dollar. Want things their way, and if they don't get it their own way, they stick to crying about it and taking it to the media. Go figure. If I cried about that over the media, if I was that age, I'd have a first-class butt whooping all over the city of Cincinnati at the receiving end of it. We need to go back to those days again. Now on to Pittsburgh. It is Terry Bradshaw, the all-time great standout quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers, 4-time Super Bowl winner, voicing his opinion on the supposed rumor that the Steelers are supposedly pursuing or supposedly supposed to get Aaron Rodgers. I don't know what the official result of this is. And basically called the Steelers a joke for going after him, and told Aaron Rodgers he needs to disappear and chew on bark. He's right about the chew on bark quote, because the guy we know is a 41-year-old coward and a narcissist who needs to just evaporate from society for good. He genuinely does. That's how he's carried himself in Green Bay, how he carried himself in New York, and now it seems like he's trying to drag this out using the Pat McAfee show as a result. But I get why the Steelers are pursuing this for this reason. You talk about arguably the worst quarterback room in the entire NFL. I mean, Mason Rudolph, the drafting of Will Howard and Skylar Thompson. There's even a rumor they were linked to Kirk Cousins. I don't know what's going to happen there. Is going to force the Falcons to take a lot of money on that one. And I get why they would want a veteran quarterback with that type of offense. But what I don't understand, and not just from Pittsburgh's perspective, from other teams' perspective, why do people get so obsessed with wanting mid to late 30-somethings on their rosters when they basically, some of them have nothing left to offer? And in this case, we talk about Aaron Rodgers, 2 years removed from a torn ACL. He's going to be 41. And Kirk Cousins himself, 2 years removed from an ACL tear. He's going to be like 36 or 37 or something like that. Don't remember what age. What is this ideology of getting one of those quarterbacks on a 1 to 2 year stopgap that's going to not get you anywhere? I mean, why don't you just roll with what you got, see what you have, and then take it from there? The Giants are the perfect example of this. They got both Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston on short-term contracts that makes you wonder what they're thinking on a short-term deal. But they could just roll the dice with a rookie like Jackson Dart and just send him out there. I mean, where does this sort of thing get you? That's what I don't understand. I get it from Pittsburgh's perspective. They need a quarterback. But I just in a general sense, maybe they should just go ahead and just roll with Will Howard and see what they do. I mean, I saw a couple of highlights of him in the OTAs for Pittsburgh. I thought he looked solid. I mean, I get they're struggling to find that replacement since Big Ben Roethlisberger retired a couple of years back, which, it was going to happen, not having a long-term solution. They thought Kenny Pickett was the answer. We know that what happened with that situation. But Pittsburgh, whoever they put a quarterback, I think they're going to be fine. I mean, they're going to get their 9 to 10 wins. They're going to flirt with one of those wild card spots in the AFC. I mean, the ceiling for them is probably second to the AFC North, probably the ceiling and floor because that's probably where they're going to finish. But getting a 41-year-old quarterback with that kind of baggage, I'm not sure that's the route to go, especially when you consider they just sent George Pickens out with his baggage. And not too long ago, they put up with both Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown, and we know the baggage they brought to Pittsburgh. So I'm not sure what they're going to accomplish bringing the baggage off of this one simply because they dealt with it once before, and going through it again, I don't know if it's worth it. Interesting story to watch. But Terry Bradshaw is right. That guy needs to disappear, go eat bark, whatever the heck he wants to do, go on his retreat, whine like a narcissist on the Pat McAfee show, whatever. Doesn't belong on an NFL field anymore. I don't think it's just the Pittsburgh Steelers that need to stay away from him. Everybody in the NFL finally needs to tell the guy to just beat it because he no longer belongs. And on to one of my favorite topics, because once again, everybody is throwing a hissy fit both ways on this. And I'm going to try and close this thing out. The morons at Pro Football Focus, once again, want to stick their nose where they doesn't belong. They think they're the end-all be-all when it comes to NFL player rankings, NFL this, NFL that. They bring nothing to the table. Let's get that out of the way. They bring nothing to the table. I said before, they look like a bunch of used-up Steve Urkels on cocaine with glasses as big as my head, wearing three-piece suits, sitting in the front of a computer, acting like they can toggle up stats and create their own statistical categories and think their statistical analysis is the end-all be-all. I'm surprised how many people still think PFF has credibility when they really don't. Well, let's start with this. They're from Cincinnati. By default, because they're from Cincinnati, they don't have any credibility. Some of the people that work there, like Sam Monson, among many others, just carry themselves like a bunch of arrogant pricks when it comes to the platforms. And when they get called out, they feel the need to get defensive on their stance. I trace back to what took place a few years ago with the edge rusher debate in the AFC North. You know, TJ Watt, Trey Hendrickson, and Myles Garrett. Everybody knows I love the heck out of all three standout edge rushers. But the weird criteria that was used to put Myles Garrett over Watt and Hendrickson without definitive explanation and definitive proof proved to me to my face why PFF should be Pro Football Focus. They should call themselves PFF in the sense of Pro Football Frauds, because they are nothing but a bunch of used up frauds, and their criteria just doesn't stick. Doesn't make any sense. And we have people who think they're the end-all be-all. They're not. But there's some people who want to give them the time of day, good or bad. The less you deal with them, the less you talk to them, the less you mention them, the better it is for the NFL community. Why? Because they bring nothing to the table other than just a used-up bunch of stat geeks that look like Steve Urkel on cocaine with eyeglasses as big as my head, maybe eyeglasses as big as a global debt. I mean, that's how dorky-looking and stupid-looking they look. Trust me, I've seen a couple of those guys when I was in Cincinnati not too long ago coming out of that office. They do look like that. But PFF is not the end game. Anyone who thinks that needs to just stop following football, period, because they bring nothing to the table. I said, they're not Pro Football Focus. They should call themselves Pro Football Frauds, because they're nothing but a group of used up, dorky-looking frauds. They resort to stats and screenshots, something 3-year-olds can do better than they could. I think stats and screenshots are the answer to who and what their criteria is for player success and player comparisons when it isn't. They want their 5 minutes of fame from me. I just get it. So they can just shoo away. Anyone that gives them the time of day, it's not worth it, because their criteria, it's something out of this world. It makes you wonder what world they're coming from, especially when a bunch of them look like Steve Urkel on cocaine. Speaking of debates, I just want to touch on this for a couple minutes before I head on to the other topics, because once again, the X platform was in a firestorm over the past couple of days. Apparently, it was presented to ESPN analyst Mina Kimes. It has to do with quarterback debates that involve Lamar Jackson of Baltimore, Josh Allen of Buffalo, and Joe Burrow of Cincinnati. I guess some idiot named Joe Goodberry felt the need to put Pro Bowlers as the reasons for why he thinks Joe Burrow is better than both. Because Lamar Jackson has a boatload of Pro Bowlers. Josh Allen has somewhere in the middle. Joe Burrow has few. When was the last time Pro Bowlers had credibility? When was the last time being mentioned as a Pro Bowler had credibility? because everybody knows what happens at the Pro Bowl game. They get nominated and they disappear. And the Pro Bowl game as itself, we know, is worse than the Barnum and Bailey circus will ever be, because Pro Bowlers don't distinguish who has a better quarterback, rating, or a quarterback, or who's a better quarterback. Period. Okay, I mean, that's why I don't partake in debates, because what in the world is your criteria? And now we have people using Pro Bowlers as criteria, especially in Buffalo and Cincinnati, who think Allen and Burrow belong in the same conversation as Jackson. And we can forget Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes is so far up there and nobody can see him. You think Pro Bowlers is the answer to it? Having that many Pro Bowlers on your roster makes them better quarterbacks? Give me a break. And we have people trying to defend Joe Burrow's empty stats last season because he went 9-8 of a bad defense. No, that does not help the cause at all, because that was the third time in his career he missed the playoffs, 3 out of 5 years. And I don't want to hear about a bad defense in Cincinnati, because I can resort to the 1984 season when a fellow named Dan Marino had the worst run defense in the NFL at the time, back in 1984. What did Dan Marino do? Lead the Dolphins to a Super Bowl appearance with basically better stats than Joe Burrow, in less games, and with not as talented of wide receiver core as what Burrow has. And now they lost the Super Bowl to the San Francisco 49ers because Joe Montana was on the other side. But I don't want to hear about bad defenses either, because you guys knew coming in you had a bad defense. And not to mention that quarterback I just mentioned in Cincinnati, you're paying that guy $300 million. You're not paying that guy $300 million to have 9-8 seasons, are you? No, you're not. You're paying that guy to at least get you over the hump at one point. I mean, I can point to many other quarterbacks who had defenses as bad, if not worse, than the Cincinnati Bengals last season, only have AFC title game appearances, Super Bowl appearances. I think in one case, Peyton Manning in 2006 winning a Super Bowl, because that defense was record-breaking bad all throughout the season. I mean, twice in the last 4 games, that Colts defense was ran over by Maurice Jones-Drew, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and still they squeaked into the playoffs, and the Colts managed to win the Super Bowl that year. And I said, Dan Marino, what did Dan Marino do in 84 with that worst defense at the time, the worst run defense in the NFL? All he did was throw for 5,084 yards, which stuck for the next 2.5 decades as the record. He had Mark Clayton and Mark Duper. No one's going to mistake them for Tyreek Hill and Jaden Waddle. Still managed to throw for 5,000 yards and get that Miami team to this lone Super Bowl appearance with Marino as quarterback. They lost to Joe Montana, but the point is, he got him to a Super Bowl. I've seen Patrick Mahomes lead his quarterbacks to a Super Bowl with bad defenses. Same with Tom Brady had an appearance. I think it was like the second time with the Giants. They were not that great of a defense, but he still managed to make the Super Bowl. So spare me your idiocy when it comes to this ideology that Joe Burrow, because he has a bad defense and because he has fewer Pro Bowlers than Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen do, belong in the same conversation as those two quarterbacks, because that's not the criteria that works. Try something better, and no, don't bring up those empty stats, because when you're throwing for 4,900 yards and you finish with 9-8 records, I don't care about anything else. And I'm not paying a guy $300 million to have 9-8 seasons back to back, because that's what's happened. And you guys think he belongs in the category as Allen and Jackson because of it? Spare me the hypocrisy. But as far as that debate goes, you can have at it. I'm not going to engage in it. All three are standout quarterbacks. We're talking Jackson, Allen, and Burrow. And I'll say this. Lamar Jackson's not going to win the stat sheet simply because I said all along, I think of him as a dynamic player who just makes dynamic plays. Yes, he does have to get better in the postseason. A lot of Ravens fans and Ravens media people will tell you that he does. I agree. But does not act like the guy is just some bum of the month, because that's what you guys in Cincinnati and Buffalo are acting like, thinking your quarterbacks are better than him because Lamar Jackson is some bum. That is where I lost both fan bases a long time ago. I mean, if I said forget Patrick Mahomes, he's in his own. But to think you guys are better than Lamar Jackson because you have better postseason runs doesn't do anything. And oh, by the way, I'll conclude with this. Don't give me Joe Burrow's 5-2 playoff record, because that is ancient history, simply because he's missed the playoffs the last 2 seasons. And because he's missed the playoffs the last 2 seasons, his playoff record is officially null and void, and he can axe it when it comes to quarterback comparisons. I mean, there's a reason why I even put guys like Jalen Hurts and Jaden Daniels in the top 5 with Allen, Mahomes, and Jackson. There's a lot of reasons for it. I'll let you guys figure that one out because I don't share my criteria with people because I don't engage in hot arguments if you're not going to carry on with me in an intelligent debate. Felt good to get that off my chest. Now to the NBA. Shout out to the Oklahoma City Thunder. After the Durant, Westbrook, Ibaka, Harden era just went to the shambles and years of rebuilding and stacking up picks, it finally paid off, and they're going to the NBA Finals. All credit to Sam Presti, who basically stockpiled on picks, rebuilt the team from the ground up. Maybe the best trade he got out of it was trading Paul George to the Clippers for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and a boatload of picks. One of them wound up being Chet Holmgren, and among many others on that rotation, making a trade for Alex Caruso. And now they're in the finals, and I think they're going to be the favorite over either Indiana or New York. It's a team that plays like a team. Something we haven't seen much in recent NBA years. Reminds me a bit of how teams like the Spurs used to play with Greg Popovich. The case of the whole being greater than the sum of its parts. I mean, outside of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and maybe Chet Holmgren, nobody's going to stand out in terms of a household name. Of course, Alexander won the MVP. People want to call him a free throw merchant. That's just idiot talk. But after years of having 20 and 21 win seasons, looked like they was never going to get back after they lost to Miami in the 2012 NBA Finals. They're back here again, and they might just finish it off and bring the Larry O'Brien Trophy home to Oklahoma City for the first time in its history after it moved from Seattle. They're going to be the favorites. They're going to be a tough out because they just beat the belligerents out of the Minnesota Timberwolves. The same Timberwolves that basically dog-walked the Lakers and Warriors in 5 games apiece. They get dog-walked in 5 games because the front line just mugged the front line of Minnesota. I mean, talk about Gobert and Randall, who are both solid. The Thunder front line just shut them down and just ran them out of Oklahoma City. They're going to be the favorites over either Indiana or New York, simply because I think both of those teams are going to have issues when it comes to team depth. So let's see where we're going to go with this one, because I think both will be good series. I probably would favor Oklahoma over either of them. Now to speaking of the Minnesota Timberwolves, everyone's putting this face of the NBA mantra before the series started on the standout player, Anthony Edwards. First of all, can people stop with this face of the whatever sport is conversation? Because I think it's just the definition of blatant ignorance. It really is. Everyone's going to have their favorite player, and they're going to put them as the face of the whatever league. If you put them the face of your franchise, that's one thing. I get it. Face of an entire league. The only guy that was face of a league was Jerry West. Plain and simple. No one's even come close to being the face of whatever league. Why? The logo. I mean, he has a logo on him. That's why Jerry West is the face of the NBA. It's probably going to be forever and ever and ever until someone changes it, which I don't know who is going to or not. But this face of whatever, I think, is just stupid talk for beginners. Anthony Edwards is a heck of a talent, and I think his time is coming soon. And he showed back-to-back Western Conference Finals appearances. I don't even know who the heck the second best roster player on that roster is. I mean, it's something we can debate. But I think he's on his way. But the face of the NBA talk, I think, is just ignorant. Nobody's a face of the NBA right now. I mean, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is an MVP. Let's just leave it at that. No such thing as a face of the NBA, because it's a definition of ignorant talk. It's a definition of stupid talk. Even Michael Jordan in his heyday said he didn't like that discussion himself because it disrespects everybody else. I mean, people want to put players like Jokic and Antetokounmpo on there. No, nobody's a face of the league. Anthony Edwards is still a young kid. He's only 23. He's just started to scratch the surface of his potential. Just now, that Minnesota team needs to start to put an adequate roster together around him and maybe start to get over the hump and actually make it past the conference finals this time. Because the second straight season, not only they lose the Western Conference Finals, they get dog walked in the elimination game. Remember, last year was at home to Dallas when Luka Doncic went wild. And this year it was the Thunder, where just the Thunder did anything and everything they wanted to. So the face of the league talk is just stupid in any sport. Let's get that out of the way. Not just basketball, any sport. Because I hear it with boxing. Who's the face of boxing? Nobody is, because that's just ignorant talk. But Anthony Edwards, I think, still has a bright future. He's on his way. He's on the right path. I know he didn't do all that great in the elimination game, but neither did the entire Minnesota team because they were punked from the beginning. But they'll be back. They put a right team around Anthony Edwards. I think they could do something. The kid's only 23. Ease up on him a little bit. And speaking of the world of boxing, a famous face makes his presence felt again. This is 93-year-old Don King winning a first bid for a fight between Kubrat Pulev versus Mike the Bounty Hunter Jr. $1.1 million. Granted, it's for the fake heavyweight championship. Actually, a fake heavyweight championship because the real champ is Alexander Usyk. Anybody with a brain knows this. 93 years old, Don King winning purse bids for heavyweight championship fights. There's 3 guarantees in the boxing life. Death, taxes, Don King, only in America. Here we are in 2025 having a talk about Don King winning purse bids at age 93. The guy's just, you can say what you want about him. Good, bad, pretty, ugly. Everything is 100% true all the way around. But, a polarizing figure in the sport of boxing because it divides the boxing community all over the place for all the reasons. But the guy just finds a way to make his imprint some way, somehow. And here we are at age 93, winning a purse bid for a fight in 2025. Granted, it's for a fake heavyweight championship, but Don King is still Don King at the age of 93, calendar year 2025. I mean, I don't know how much of that 7-foot high hair he has left. It's probably down to like 7.5, not even 7/10 of an inch now because he probably lost it all as he got older. But here he is, winning fight purse bids, wanted to make an impact on the sport. You can say a lot of things about him over the years, but when he put his money where his mouth is when it comes to making fights and winning purse bids, he's found a way to do it, and he's still doing it at age 93. I mean, I got to tip my hat off to him and Bob Arum at age 91. I mean, they're still kicking it in this fight game as promoters, winning purse bids, promoting big events. They're doing something right. Some of these other morons, like the coward Hal Amon, needs to take notes from them too, because Arum and King still have it. I mean, you're winning purse bids at age 93. At age 93. Don King is 93 years old, people. The same Don King who promoted Rumble in the Jungle, Ali versus Foreman, who gave us Mike Tyson versus Michael Spinks in 88, who gave us Pernell Whitaker and Julio Cesar Chavez in 1993, who also gave us the 2 Holyfield Tyson fights. But he's still winning purse bids at age 93. Still doing it. He's doing something right to be successful at age 93. He's a miracle. He is a miracle. I'll give him that. I mean, if I can do something like that, if I manage to live at 93 and do something like that, I've done something right in this life. That's all I got to say. 93 years old, Don King. Yeah, I mean, you just got to marvel at him. I mean, love him or hate him. I mean, actually, he drives opinions all over the place because of his wildest approach to the sport, because it was unique in his own way. But that's why he's Don King. Now, speaking of historical aspects, we're going to go back 90 years ago today. This one was the 3rd showdown between Barney Ross and Jimmy McLarnin. I bring this up because this was at a time when multi-division winners just started. And one of the first was Barney Ross when he regained the welterweight championship that he lost to McLarnin a year before. This was a 3-fight series where they traded the welterweight championship both ways. I mean, the first fight, McLarnin was a champion. Ross won it. In the second fight, Ross was a champion. McLarnin won it. And now we had the events for the third fight. And in this particular fight, it was a case of Barney Ross sort of fighting a little out of his element, because in the second fight, McLarnin had Ross running into punches. So what happens in the third fight, Ross alters his strategy. And basically, we have a chess match in the first half of the fight until the second half, as the fight wore on, the sheer will and greatness of Barney Ross took over, and he became the welterweight championship of the world. The second time he's won it as a welterweight, 4-time world champion, 3 weak divisions. Here's the thing about this. He won a world championship at lightweight, junior welterweight, and welterweight. Back in 1935, nobody recognized the junior welterweight division or whoever won a world title. That's why nobody gave Barney Ross that distinction for the longest time. Because back then it was the old school 8. It was heavyweight, light heavyweight, middleweight, welterweight, lightweight, featherweight, bantamweight, and flyweight. That was the only recognized divisions back in the 1930s. And Ross did win a junior welterweight championship. It was a legit one, but it wasn't recognized because no one recognized that division at the time because the junior and supers of those weight divisions weren't, thought of as, legitimate weight classes at the time. So he becomes the first to do this, even though no one recognized it. So he becomes a 2-time world champion at welterweight, beating McLarnin, who was a very, very good fighter back in those days. I mean, before he lost to Ross, he won. He essentially stunned the world when he shocked young Corbett before the first fight with Ross to win the welterweight title. And we had the trilogy with Barney Ross. Basically, he won the second fight, but a year later, Ross showed why he's an all-time great by winning the third fight, basically going away. It was basically an 11 rounds to 4 type win for Barney Ross in a fight that started out as a technical match, but then when it started to get rough, McLarnin did everything he could to hold off the great Barney Ross, which didn't happen. Ross came on to win the undisputed welterweight championship in the one belt era, where one belt was winner take all. And Barney Ross became the undisputed one belt welterweight champion for the second time in that weight class, a third weight class overall. And his place in history is secure. After that, Ross defended the title twice before he lost to the legendary, iconic Henry Armstrong in a fight where basically Ross showed his age, gave Armstrong all he can handle early. Armstrong made adjustments to win the welterweight championship. And we know the legacy of Henry Armstrong. When he won the welterweight title, he was still holding the featherweight championship. A year after he won the welterweight title, he goes down to lightweight to win 3 world titles simultaneously to join Barney Ross as the only 3-division world champions at the time, which was a big deal because that was never accomplished. Now, Ross, the lightweight, junior welterweight, and welterweight, but as I said, no one acknowledged the junior welterweight as a legitimate class at the time. But Armstrong, from featherweight to welterweight down to lightweight, and did it all in less than a year. And did that less than a year. Certainly why Henry Armstrong is probably a top 5 pound for pound all time. And we're talking all time. Not just mythical or opinion. I mean, overall, you want to talk about unbreakable records in boxing, Henry Armstrong might have it, especially in the political world of the sport that's become today. Back then, it was one belt, winner take all, from featherweight to welterweight to lightweight. He became the undisputed 3-division champ then. But it was 90 years ago today, the guy he beat for the welterweight title, Barney Ross, became a 3-division world champ when he regained the welterweight title from the tough Jimmy McLarnin by unanimous decision to solidify his place in history. Now, we talk about the 2 fighters afterward. I said Barney Ross's career ended when he lost to Henry Armstrong. But after the fight, he went to moved to Vancouver to excuse me, my bad. I got wrong here. He Barney Ross, known as Dover Barrel David Rofosky, that was his real name, went by Barney Ross. After his career was over, he became a World War II veteran. Had a stellar amateur career. Was a part of World War II, but the downturn after he got shot, got hooked on morphine because of suffering from wounds, gunshot wounds. Basically, back then in the States, it was replaced with street heroin, and basically that was where his downturn ended. But his place in history is forever secure. We talk about a 3-time world champion. Then we talk about Jimmy McLarnin, a very, very tough fighter. He had a shocker over young Corbett, shocked Benny Leonard, who was considered a top 3 all-time great at lightweight. And then the capper with him, though, was the 2 losses after that to the standout Tony Canzonori, who later joined Ross and Armstrong as 3-division world champions. But Jimmy McLarnin, a very solid lightweight and welterweight, gave anyone a tough time during that era. Big wins over guys like Benny Leonard and Barney Ross in the second of that Ross-McLarnin trilogy. Stand-up fighter, Ross certainly an all-time great, Their place in history is secure. God rest the souls of both of them. Very intriguing stories, both of them, especially McLarnin. It's a must read. I mean, even if you're not into boxing, must read. It's a good one. The guy became an actor at some point and made his name when he moved to Canada. And another one that took place 41 years ago today. This was for the lightweight championship between Livingstone Bramble and Ray Mancini. I bring this up because this was the years after the unfortunate fight between Ray Mancini and Duke Kim. You know the story about that one where Mancini and Kim get engaged in a war where Mancini wins by knockout, but Kim dies 4 days after after the blow sustained to the head. And the build up to this first fight centered around what took place in 1982, because that was Livingstone Bramble's idea by his own admission, basically bringing up the incident, asking Ray Mancini what it's like to kill a man. Now, by Ray Mancini's admission, he's heard it all over the place. This was a case of activity versus accuracy, both very strong lightweights. Both guys fought well as you possibly could, but it was accuracy in the heavy hands of Bramble that took over the fight, and the fight was stopped in the 13th round, rewarding the TKO win to Livingstone Bramble. I bring this up because everybody knows the story of Ray Mancini after the Kim fight. It's debated whether he was still the same or not. I mean, he successfully defended his title a couple more times before this. And Ray Mancini, I mean, it's a complicated subject because he always takes a high road in this approach simply because we talk about what happened to him with the Kim fight. A lot of things change in the sport forever. And Mancini, maybe we won't tell you mentally or physically, we will say, maybe he did start to feel the after effects as it's going on, because to find out 4 days after a fight like that, someone is dead, it's hard to imagine what someone is thinking. I mean, there's a story, I can't remember, it's on ESPN, pulled it out, it's called The Proud Son or something like that, I can't remember which, where chronicles Ray Mancini's life after the Kim fight. This fight with Livingstone Bramble was one of the ones after that, and basically sums up that documentary in a nutshell. Simply because of everything Ray Mancini had to endure and listen to after that incident. Because Livingstone Bramble used it as a prop to promote their first fight that took place 41 years ago in upstate New York. It got him a TKO win. A lot of people want to point to that. Maybe the problem was Mancini was just tailor-made for Bramble and was on his downturn anyways because he'd been in a lot of tough fights. I mean, he had tough fights with guys like Frias, Chacon, Arguello, just to name a few of them. But the bigger one here is that both Hector Camacho at the time and Aaron Pryor, who were looking at for Mancini for a cash-out fight, it never was to be. It led to a rematch a little more than a year later where Bramble would get the decision win. But that was basically the end game for Bramble because he would lose his championship to Edmund Rosario and was never able to fight for a world title after that. Basically, he continued on fighting a bunch of tier 2, tier 3 titles against faded fighters of his time, like a Roger Mayweather and a Charles Murray, just to name a few of them. A solid, sturdy, strong fighter was Bramble. I mean, didn't do one thing great, but was strong and did a lot of things well. And that's what he was able to put it together in his performance when he beat Mancini to win the lightweight title 41 years ago. Of course, Mancini only fought 5 times after this. He lost the rematch to Bramble. Eventually got a title fight against Hector Camacho in a fight that's still disputed to this day. Lost its controversial decision. And his career ended in 1992 in a fight that maybe he shouldn't have come back against when he fought Greg Haugen, where he was just beaten down and bum rushed in 7 rounds. But I bring this particular fight on this day because the significance of this was how Ray Mancini was after the unfortunate circumstances of his fight with Duke Kim in 1982. Started to see the downturn, and basically the end game, you could see, was for him in this first fight when he fought Livingstone Bramble, because Bramble just won this one going away and stopped him in the 13th round. But Mancini, exciting fighter out of Youngstown, Ohio. Always wanted to turn the TV on. It basically gave an honest effort in this fight. Bramble was just too strong. And Bramble carried on from this fight. He fought for another 2 decades. He didn't retire to the calendar year of 2004, just fighting on and on and on and on. And unfortunate, of course, it was earlier this year that he was succumbed to a battle with cancer. May God rest his soul, Livingstone Bramble. But Bramble was a very strong fighter, very tough fighter, tough to knock out. I mean, I think he was only knocked out like once or twice in his entire career in all of those fights. I think one of them was Roger Mayweather in the mid-90s. But he was a strong fighter with a sturdy chin. And no one's going to mistake him for a second coming of anybody or anything. But he gave honest efforts, gave good fights, and fought some of the best competition you could available. And his pinnacle took place 41 years ago today when he shocked Ray Mancini. Hopefully Ray Mancini is doing well, because I don't know how to go through the stuff that he went through. And I conclude with this conversation at the end of the night by talking about another one that takes place, and I'm going to wrap it up because I won't be here till after the weekend, is what took place 37 years ago. Can't remember the year. It was an HBO double dip that involved Tony Tucker versus Buster Douglas and Mike Tyson versus Pinklon Thomas. The story of this one was a vacant title after Michael Spinks was stripped. And it was a conclusion of the undisputed heavyweight championship tournament of the 80s. Basically, it was a cleanup. Tucker came from behind to stop Buster Douglas, and Mike Tyson just obliterated Pinklon Thomas en route to a knockout win. And it set up the undisputed championship 2 months later, where Tyson became the undisputed champ. Because the heavyweight division, that was when the sport started to become very political, belts all over the place. But Don King, to his credit, put together a hell of a card to put together a heck of a fight to where this doubleheader took place and have Tyson and Tucker meet to finally have the undisputed champ. And that was Mike Tyson when he beat Tony Tucker on August 1st, 1987. But it was 2 months before that Tucker and Tyson won their respective fights to have the undisputed championship, because Michael Spinks didn't want anything to do with Tony Tucker. He wanted a cash-out fight with Jerry Cooney, and he had it. And so that is what happened at the end of the day. Lots of history I could go into with this one. But actually, let me back up here for a second before I wrap this up. We're getting to a point to where we're no longer going to have undisputed champions, unfortunately, because belts want to have their own, and I mean their own. Because if they want to have their own, that's how it's going to be. And we just saw what happened with the political aspect that involved Dmitry Bivol being stripped, and we know Alexander Usyk was stripped. But I brought up this particular circumstance that took place with Tucker and Tyson because it was at a time when being the undisputed heavyweight champion mattered. Both guys wanted to be the undisputed champ, more so with Tyson because that was his goal, and he reached it August 1st, 1987. There was a time when you wanted to be the undisputed heavyweight champion. You really wanted to be it. We're not going to have that ever again because the sport has gone so political, and the governing bodies want to be their own entity. I mean, it's not like the UFC or the others. The governing bodies want to be their own entity and just want to ruin everything for everyone. That's why we have so many fake champions today, like Sergio Ramirez, David Benavidez, and Daniel Dubois, just to name a few. Crazy what's happened to our sport. And someone who's been around as long as I have, I wish I never followed it. But I give it credit for one thing. It helped me prepare to understand a lot of things in life and a lot of things when it comes to sports analysis. That's what I have to say. And that'll wrap up this edition of Sirhan on X. I will be gone for the weekend, and I will be back Monday night. As always, make self-care your number one priority in life. If you don't take care of yourself first, nothing else matters. If you take care of yourself first, good things will follow. If you miss any part of this show, you can listen to it on the Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Spotify apps. And for those of you who are watching me on Kick for the first time, just want to give you guys a shout out. I made my debut on that platform. But until then, I hope everyone has themselves a wonderful rest of the night. Take care of yourselves. God bless, and enjoy the evening.